let me get this up and rolling. So to begin this chapter, we will hit some highlights of what the president's role is to do and how he tries to accomplish that. So that's going to be a majority of what we deal with today from chapter number 13. So we begin here with his job description. We all know his job, according to the Constitution, is to enforce the laws. But there's a lot that goes along with that, or that has been added to that throughout the years. Some of it has been added by law, some of it's been added just by tradition or by precedent from the president. And so there are a number of things here that are added to him. I've got 6 roles that the president fills. Actually, make that 8. 8 roles that he fills. They're going to show up here on the screen. I would recommend that you put a short description so that you remember how he fulfills that role or what he does with it. That's not necessarily going to show up on the screen. But the first one here is the chief of state. And in this role, he serves as the head of our government. And in some ways, it's ceremonial. We understand that we also have members of the judicial branch, members of Congress that are part of the head of government. But when other countries want to sit down and talk with our nation, they typically are going to go to the president. So he is the head of our government, and with that role, he's pretty symbolic, kind of like the American flag or the bald eagle. When people think of the United States of America, they think the President of the United States. And we have a couple presidents in our history to credit the perspective on that, one of which I believe is Theodore Roosevelt in his openness to the rest of the world and the things that he did. I think Franklin Roosevelt is another one that really put our nation on the map in World War II. There are probably a number of other ones you could also mention that served in that role very, very well. Other countries, they have similar positions. They have kings or they have monarchs. You have the Queen of England. She's kind of that figurehead, although she doesn't have a whole lot of power there. He also serves as the chief executive. So this is the constitutional role where he is going to enforce the laws of our country. And within his job description, he is going to have a hand in each one of the 3 branches of government, although some areas not nearly as much. But that's his role as chief executive, to be the chief law enforcement officer. As chief administrator, he helps our federal government operate and run on a daily basis. We have a federal budget that is, if it's not over $3 trillion, it's very close. But he has to operate that and determine where that money goes. I realize that Congress writes up a lot of that budget, but he proposes most of that as well. He has a lot of assistants that help carry out many of his duties here as chief administrator. It's just too much for one person to be able to accomplish. He also serves as our chief diplomat. By the way, these are all going to say chief in front of them, so if you just want to have chief once and just write all these, might be a good shorthand move for you. So chief diplomat, he is the chief architect of our foreign policy. He's going to be the one that will negotiate with other countries. He will meet with foreign leaders and foreign powers in this role as chief diplomat. One of my favorite people to study is Ronald Reagan. And I love studying how he met with Russia. Some of the stories that you hear. Now, Ronald Reagan had a very interesting personality anyway. But there is a famous video clip of when they had a negotiation in Iceland, I believe it was, where they agreed to meet there because it was a neutral country. It was extremely cold, and you see the head of the Soviet Union get out of this limousine in a big old wool, it wasn't wool, it was a fur hat, overcoat, bundled up really good, and you see Ronald Reagan come out of the neutral embassy, walking out in just a suit and a tie, and it was really frigid that day. So he did, when they interviewed Reagan about that, he said, well, there were two things I thought about. Number one, I wanted to get there early to make sure that I was welcoming him. Smooth move there. And number two, when the world saw that the leader of Russia was all bundled up and cold, and the leader of America was confident and just wearing a suit, man, that guy's a pretty tough guy. And so it kind of was, he was playing mind games with him, and it was pretty smooth. So he serves as a chief diplomat to argue or to set some of that stuff up there. He also serves as our commander-in-chief. Now, in this role, he leads our military. While it is true that he does hire military chiefs and military executives to help him make these decisions, ultimately many of the military decisions come to him, and he's got to give the final call. He carries with him the football everywhere he goes. That has in it all the nuclear codes and the launch commands that he needs. So hopefully we never have to use it. He also serves the chief legislator. By the way, I'm not going to test you over this, but just as a quick side note, the United States military spending, if we total that and put it on a spreadsheet, that is equal to what the entire rest of the world spends on military combined. That's mind-blowing. So we put a lot of money in our military. Probably not enough, though, for all the things they do. So he also serves as the chief legislator. He has the ability to propose public policy in this role. He cannot write laws. We all know that. But he can go to Congress and he can say, I'd really like you to work on this. Make this happen. He can put pressure on him. He can go out and recruit support from the American people, go out and give a speech in the middle of Pennsylvania somewhere because he wants them to put pressure on the Congress to write a law or to pass a law. Woodrow Wilson was perhaps one of the most famous for this when he went out in the 1920s promoting the League of Nations, which ultimately didn't work. Now, he also is the chief of the party. As the most visible face of his particular party, he becomes the leader of that group. So right now, it happens to be Donald Trump for the Republican Party, even though many Republicans would not have voted, or maybe didn't vote for him, or would not support him. He still holds that role just because of his election. Many people criticize this because of the fact that if he is the president of the United States, who's supposed to be neutral and supposed to be looking out for everybody, should he really be the face of a party? But there's not a whole lot we can do to change that. It's more of a mentality thing. So then there's also the chief citizen. This is his 8th role, that he is the representative of all the American people. He is supposed to uphold the American values that are common to all of us. Some presidents have done this better than others. Some relate to the common man better than others do. Many people say Donald Trump does not. That he is more of the upper class elitist and doesn't understand the struggles of the lower middle class. Many people looked at Barack Obama and they said that he did understand this, and he reached out to people much better than what Donald Trump does. You can make your own case and come to your own conclusion on that. But what we want that president to do as a chief citizen is understand he's one of us. And he needs to understand he's one of us as well. And he's only there because we have elected him to that position. Now, the Constitution does have a few formal requirements, of which we're actually going to get into on Wednesday. So